Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a fascinating, frankly mind-bending puzzle where modern infrastructure, wildlife conservation, and traditional agriculture all crash into each other. We usually think of conservation as a super simple equation, right? Just keep human development out and nature will thrive. But today, we're looking at a scenario where that logic is completely flipped on its head. We're tracking the survival of one of the absolute rarest birds in the world, and it turns out its future is surprisingly tied to the very specific ways humans farm the land. It's a complex story, but a really important one.
Just think about this number for a second. 100 to 150. That is literally the entire remaining wild population of the critically endangered Great Indian Bustard today. Just 100 to 150 individuals left on the whole planet. This puts the species at the absolute precipice of extinction. And when numbers drop this low, scientists aren't just worried about the raw count anymore. They start worrying about genetic bottlenecks and inbreeding, which, as you might guess, can accelerate a species' decline even faster.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll meet the Great Indian Bustard. Then we'll examine the landscape under threat, look at the Deccan Plateau's promise, dive into how traditional farming acts as a lifeline, and finally, chart out the path to recovery. Let's get into it.
Part 1. Meet the Great Indian Bustard, a truly majestic bird that's hovering right on the brink.
Okay, so what makes this species so incredibly unique? Well, the crucial thing to understand is that this bird absolutely avoids dense forests and intensive development. It's a large, pretty heavy, ground-dwelling omnivore. It eats seeds, insects, small reptiles, rodents, you name it. But here's the really fascinating part: their breeding behavior. The males perform these elaborate courtship displays to attract females. It's a practice called lekking. Now, to do this safely and to nest on the ground, they need vegetation that's just right, roughly 2 to 3 feet high. If the grass is too short, they're exposed to predators. If it's too tall or dense, they literally can't navigate or display properly.
Historically, their range was massive. They spanned across 11 Indian states and right into parts of southern Pakistan, roaming freely across these huge, continuous stretches of open plains. But today, the spatial decline is honestly a tragedy. They are isolated to tiny, heavily fragmented pockets. The largest remaining group is holding on in the Thar Desert of Rajasthan, while these much smaller, super vulnerable groups are just scattered across Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Deccan Plateau states like Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh.
Moving to Part 2, a landscape under threat. Let's look at the challenges and issues. This timeline is a really tough pill to swallow. We're looking at a devastating population drop of roughly 75% in just over 30 years. We went from a reasonably healthy localized population of nearly 400 birds back in 1989 down to fewer than 8 individuals recorded in recent systematic surveys in Maharashtra. That is a complete freefall. The Deccan population is at an extremely high risk of local extinction. So what's driving this rapid collapse? It's basically a perfect storm of human progress. You've got conventional, intensive farming expansion and modern renewable energy infrastructure, and both of them inadvertently chop up the bird's essential habitat. As India aggressively scales up its vital renewable energy capacity, we're talking massive solar and wind projects, they have to build high-tension power lines, and these lines cut directly across the bird's open flight paths. Since bustards are heavy and actually lack great forward vision, they frequently collide with these wires. Add in a massive shift toward highly mechanized cash crops, free-ranging feral dogs, and chemical pesticides, and you can see why they're struggling.
Which brings us to Part 3, the Deccan Plateau's promise and our surprising savior. Researchers at the Wildlife Institute of India ran the numbers, and they found that an incredibly small fraction of this vast plateau can actually still support the bird. They used complex species distribution modeling, looking at temperature, rainfall, vegetation, human density, and figured out that only about 6.6% of the massive 720,000 square kilometer Deccan region still holds the ecological characteristics these birds need to survive.
So out of that suitable habitat, they successfully pinpointed 16 critical sites. We're talking about 18,000 square kilometers that are absolutely vital for population recovery. We're funneling down from a huge geographical region to highly targeted areas like Solapur and Osmanabad. But here's the kicker: these are not pristine, untouched wilderness zones. They are active, human-dominated landscapes. And that leads us to the most crucial discovery of the whole research. Part 4. Traditional farming as a lifeline. Let's explore the benefits of low-intensity agriculture.
Check out this breakdown. Nearly 70% of the ideal priority habitat is actually made up of low-intensity farming components. We're talking fallow lands, which are just agricultural fields left unplanted for a season, making up nearly 29%. Kharif, or monsoon crops, add another 24%. Pure grasslands, they only account for about 11.6%. So the survival of the Great Indian Bustard is intrinsically linked to the rhythms of traditional human land use.
And this gets right to the core of the conflict. Intensive modern farming, where you're growing cash crops like sugarcane or cotton, requires heavy irrigation, continuous cultivation, and chemical pesticides. Those chemicals completely wipe out the locusts and insects the bustards rely on for food. But traditional farming, growing mixed pulses and oilseeds, naturally includes periods where the land is left fallow. It creates this perfect, low-intensity mosaic that provides safe havens for nesting and plenty of bugs to forage.
As the experts at the Wildlife Institute emphasize, it's exactly this blend of human activity and rest periods that allows the Great Indian Bustard to thrive. Farmers in these regions maintain this mosaic either because of the climate or just out of traditional ecological habits. And this accidental architecture of the land, it is precisely what these birds need for their complex life cycle of breeding, nesting, and foraging.
Finally, Part 5, the path to recovery. Let's look at the future outlook and actionable solutions.
So how do we fix this? We need a targeted, multi-pronged approach. Yes, step 1 is absolutely protecting those 16 key sites. But more importantly, step 2 is financially incentivizing local farmers so they aren't forced into destructive cash cropping. We have to actively promote those traditional land use practices. Step 3, we must mitigate our infrastructure impacts, like putting bird flight diverters on those dangerous power lines. And finally, step 4, establishing conservation breeding programs. These are already underway and act as an essential insurance policy, with the goal of eventually releasing healthy birds back into these carefully managed, traditional landscapes.
This leaves us with a pretty profound question. Can we actually balance aggressive modern economic growth with the survival of our endangered ecosystems? The Great Indian Bustard is quite literally testing our ability to do just that. It's challenging us to balance our push for renewable energy and high-yield agriculture with the quiet, delicate needs of the natural world. If we can truly understand and value the role of traditional farming, we just might be able to save this incredible bird from fading into history forever.
If you found this update helpful, please hit the like button and share this video with fellow members. For more deep dives into the latest environmental regulations and industrial news, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. See you in the next one.